Hello, class. This is Professor Ellsworth. Now, a quick story for you. A few weeks ago, while I was in the middle of break, I came home around 12:30 to have lunch with my wife. And when I pulled up to the house, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the street from my house. I didn't think much of it at the time, but when I came inside and I sat down, I was talking to my wife, I looked outside, and I noticed that there was a man who came out of the house across the street from me. As he was walking out, he waved bye to my neighbor, and this struck me because I know my neighbors. I know who he is, and I know who she is, and I know that this man was not my neighbor. And considering the time, the middle of the day, knowing that my neighbor's husband was at work at the time, I had a suspicion that perhaps my neighbor was involved in some type of adulterous affair. Oh, spicy. Now, I bring this up because in a class on ethics, we are often asking ourselves, well, what should we do? Now, consider this, class. Do I have an obligation to tell my neighbor what I saw? He is my friend. She is my friend. I've known them for many years. Do I have an obligation to tell them what I saw? Should I stop him as he comes home from work? Be like, hey man, guess what I saw? Dude, there's some dude in this colored car coming out of your house today or last week. Right? Is that the right approach? Should I wait for a moment when perhaps she's out getting the mail and I walk up to her and say, hey, I don't know what's going on, but, I noticed you had this guy at your house. It's not any of my business. But if you're cheating on your husband, you need to tell him. And if you aren't, I'm going to tell him. Or is my best bet just to do absolutely nothing and not stir the hornet's nest? Just let things come to fruition on their own. If she wants to tell him, she should. If he finds out, it happens. But they are my friends, and I feel like I have an allegiance to him, an obligation perhaps that, if my wife was cheating on me and my neighbors knew about it, I think I would want my neighbors to tell me. So, as you think about how you would respond, what you would do in that situation, I want you to ask yourself, how would you come to that decision? How would you decide what to do? Would you, ponder it? Would you think about it for a few days, going to mull it over? Would you go to a friend or a family, maybe a minister, somebody that you trust, and ask them how they would respond in that scenario? Would you consider scenes from popular culture? Maybe you've seen something like this play out in a TV show or a movie or maybe a video game that you've played. And you're like, all right, that's how it worked out in that show. That's definitely what I don't want to have happen, so I'm not going to do that. Do you make your decision based off of what's best for you? Right? The best outcome, the best consequence for you. And if you do that, that's often referred to as egoism. Or do you, in making your decision, do you do it based off of what is best for others people? Do you keep yourself out of it altogether, regardless of the consequence to you? Do you consider the consequence to others? If you do that, that's considered altruism. Should you weigh all the consequences to you, the consequences to others, and kind of weigh those out, and then make your decision based off of, what would be the best outcome considering all of the consequences for those involved? And if you do that, it's often referred to as utilitarianism. Or do you say, screw the consequences, right? That's the wrong approach. The right approach is to tell the truth. To tell the truth, regardless of the situation. Right? So if we avoid or ignore the consequences altogether and instead act by principle, If it's best to tell the truth in one scenario, then it's best to tell the truth in all scenarios, regardless of the consequences. And under that type of approach, then if asked, or if it's on your conscience, perhaps the best approach is just to tell the truth, and to always tell the truth, regardless of the consequences. Now, class, this mental work through that we just went through of considering a scenario, considering how we would respond, and then more importantly, how would we respond, is the study of ethics. Now, as you kind of go through these thought processes, I hope that you'll notice that one of the things that this class will help you do is to help you develop ways of reasoning through ethical challenges that each of us face, or that our friends or our neighbors or even people that we don't know, as we consider the consequences, ethical challenges, and what is the right way, the good way to live. Now, sometimes an ethical choice is difficult because it requires us to do something that isn't easy. I think telling my neighbor that his wife is cheating on him is an example of something that is very difficult to do. Maybe being that one person in a classroom full of students that are cheating on the exam, and standing up and going to the professor and saying, all of my classmates are cheating. Now, that's a difficult decision because it puts a target on your back. That isn't easy. But this type of decision is very different than a challenging ethical choice that involves deciding between two conflicting principles. Should I be true to my friends, or should I be honest? Should I be patriotic, or should I be honest? And oftentimes the things that we will study in this class will fall in that latter category. It's not necessarily that there is a right and a wrong answer, but in making decisions, we're often forced to choose between two conflicting principles, both of which we hold dear. And so how do we make that decision? Now, let me give you another thought. If you could do something morally wrong, like cheat or steal, and you are 100% sure that no one will ever find out, is there any reason not to do it? Consider that question. Is there any reason not to do it? Now, as you consider, I want to note that this class will be a class in which students will have competing and often polar opposite opinions about what to do. Those students who are religious say there is no such thing as doing something that you will never get caught. Some would argue that God knows all, and if your day of reckoning isn't in this life, your day of reckoning will surely come. Others might think of that and say, well, that's hogwash. There's no way I believe that there is an omnipotent being out there that is taking a tally of everything that I do, and that I will be punished for all of my decisions, both good and bad, at some future date. And more than just religious, the ethical standards that we have may vary. Let me give you a case in point. I'm going to show you a video I pulled from YouTube called "The Dumbest Girls Ever Steal Girl Scout Money." Now, as you listen to this, I want you to consider these girls' arguments. Now, these are two girls who are caught after they have just stolen the piggy bank from Girl Scouts who are selling cookies outside of a grocery store. Now, listen to them explain their rationale.
Okay, so what happened here? Yesterday, I understand happened.
Basically, me and my friend Stephanie, we needed some money. We saw a girl selling Girl Scout cookies. We saw an envelope with money in it, and I grabbed it, and she drove away.
Why did you do it?
Because we needed money. We just wanted money.
What did you need the money for?
Just for anything. We didn't have any money, and it was just the easy way of getting money.
But you do realize, you're going to be charged with a crime.
Oh, I was already charged with the crime and actually pissed because I should have kept that money. They charged me with all the charges I just got.
But does it worry you? That you committed a misdemeanor?
Well, there's something I can do about it now, but
What about the people who would say, all right, it's one thing to steal money, it's another thing to do it from a 9-year-old girl selling Girl Scout cookies?
I mean, money's money. I mean, I feel bad it was a 9-year-old girl, but there was $150 in that envelope, and I wanted that money, and it was mine. I just want to say that I'm sorry for offending the Girl Scout organization, but other than that, that's it.
I mean, some people might say I heard one person in our newsroom call it heartless to steal money from a 9-year-old girl. I mean,
it's not her money. A 9-year-old girl was selling it, but it's not like she was gonna make that money. So
I'm going to interrupt at the moment. I mean, this girl has no remorse. She doesn't feel bad. I think she's most upset that she got caught. And so, me as an individual, I would never consider stealing money from the Girl Scouts. To me, that is just a boneheaded, dumb decision. I find that so appalling and wrong. And maybe it's hard for me to put words as to why that is. But here we are. If this girl was in a class with me, we would be on really opposite sides about this line of what is right and what is wrong. She doesn't see there's anything wrong with stealing money, that money is just there. Whereas I feel very strongly that what is not mine is not mine, and I have no right, no obligation to take it. This isn't, we're not prehistoric cavemen walking around and first come, first serve. Right? There are rules to our society. All right, let me continue.
it doesn't really bother me. The only thing that bothers me is my charges now.
what was the other crime that you had been charged with?
Domestic battery.
Pretty much we just saw the Girl Scouts with their little table, and me and my friend were like, let's get that money that's in that envelope. Because it was just sitting on the table, and it was her and her mom wasn't really paying attention. She was yapping to some lady, and the girl was just standing there by herself. And so my friend goes into Winn-Dixie. I was waiting outside of here, like ready to leave. So she grabs the envelope, she snatched it really quick, she ran to my car, and we left, and we parked, and we split the money.
Why did you do it?
I mean, who doesn't like money? I mean, I don't know.
But it's a crime.
I know it's a crime, but it was an easy crime. It was easy. It was sitting right there. I mean, there is a lesson learned now, but I didn't think I was going to get caught for it like that. I wasn't really aware of the cameras or anything. I didn't think about it. Didn't really think.
What's the lesson you say that you could learn out of this?
Probably not to get caught, or maybe not to steal.
I mean, do you have any remorse about stealing from a 9-year-old girl?
Right now, no, because I'm kind of pissed because I have charges and we had to give the money back anyway, so no.
And she had to give the money back. All right. So, class, there are many times in the weeks ahead that we are going to disagree. Let's just decide right now to be respectful of each other's differing views. Right? The study of ethics isn't to say that this is the only way, but there are competing ways. There are different versions of what is good and what is right. And we are most interested in how we get to that conclusion. How do you rationalize your decision that this is the good way? But let's also note that at times when we may criticize each other, that we are criticizing each other's ideas and not ourselves. We're criticizing ideas, disagreeing with the ideas, and that when we do this, we do not need to interpret these criticisms as criticisms of you as a person. These are criticisms of ideas. This is verbal sparring. This is an intellectual debate. And ultimately, our goal is to get to the bottom of what do we believe and how do we feel about what is good and what is right, and how do we come to those decisions. All right, this concludes my introduction to our Week 1, Chapter 1 study of ethics.